Can I clean your wounds?" His voice was low, steady, carrying over the roar of the river. Evelyn Marston barely heard him at first. Her vision was blurred, her lips dry and cracked, her silk dress torn in several places, damp from the cold water. She shivered as she lay half submerged in the shallow current, one arm pressed against a jagged rock to stop the bleeding. A sudden slip had thrown her from the horse she had borrowed from her father's ranch. The river's current had dragged her downstream until she had crashed against the bank. Skin scraped raw and blood streaking her arms. When she opened her eyes fully, she saw him. A tall Apache warrior stood at the river's edge, muscles taut beneath the harsh morning sun, long black hair cascading over broad shoulders, tribal jewelry glinting with every movement. His dark eyes, intense yet strangely calm, fixed on her with an unreadable expression. Evelyn tried to pull back, fear clawing at her chest, but exhaustion and pain pinned her in place. "You won't last long if I don't help," he said, voice firm but not unkind. He knelt beside her, reaching for a small pouch tied to his belt. Inside, she glimpsed clean linen strips and a vial of clear liquid. Her throat was too dry to speak, too weak even to protest. The first touch of his hands against her skin sent a shiver through her. Not from cold, but from a sensation she could not name, intense, electric, and strangely safe. He lifted her arm gently, inspecting the deep gash near her elbow. "The river has cleaned most of it," he murmured, "but it needs more care." Evelyn's chest rose and fell rapidly. Who are you?" She managed to croak. "Tazha," he said simply, as if a single name could explain everything. "And you are far from home, Evelyn Marston of the Marston Ranch." Her eyes widened. How could he know her name? Panic surged, but her muscles were too weak to resist. Her body trembled as he tore a strip of linen and soaked it in water drawn from a leather canteen. The sting of the antiseptic liquid made her wince, but his firm, patient hand soothed her. "You'll be fine," he said. But even as he spoke, his gaze flicked to the cliffs rising above the riverbank. The wilderness here was ruthless. Predators could come at any moment, and bandits often roamed near the river trails. Evelyn tried to sit up, but her body refused. The weight of her fear and pain pulled her back against the riverbank. Why help me?" she whispered, voice trembling. Taz's eyes softened. "Because once someone helped me when I had nowhere to turn," he replied. His fingers brushed against her arm as he worked, and a warmth spread through her despite the chill of the water. "Now it is my turn." The current gurgled around them. Morning sunlight splintered through the cottonwood branches lining the river, casting moving patterns across their faces. Evelyn's gaze followed the shadow of his hand as it pressed gently against her wounds. She noticed the intricate beads in his hair, the faint scar crossing his forearm, and the way he moved with a calm, deliberate strength that made her heart thump faster. "Hold still," he murmured. The simple command carried weight, not only because of her physical weakness, but because she felt some unspoken authority in him she had never encountered before. The river's roar seemed to fade around her, replaced by the sound of her own shallow breathing and the rhythm of his careful movements. Each pull of linen, each dab of antiseptic, brought her closer to consciousness, closer to reality, but also closer to something she had never expected. Trust. By the time he finished binding the wound, her arm was clean, the bleeding slowed, and the sting of pain dulled to a persistent ache. Tazha helped her to sit fully upright, his hand steadying her back. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the river rushing past, birds calling in the distance, the wind tugging at strands of her hair. "You are strong," he said finally. "Stronger than you know." Evelyn shivered not from cold, but from the sudden intimacy of the moment. Here, in the middle of the wilderness, far from town and from anyone who could protect her, a stranger had saved her life. And yet she did not fear him. Somehow she felt safe. Her lips parted, words catching in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Tazha only nodded, eyes dark and unreadable, but the faintest hint of a smile softened the corners of his mouth. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow we will see if you can stand." Evelyn sank back onto the riverbank, eyes fixed on the sky, heart racing. She had no idea who this man truly was or what he wanted, but for the first time since the fall, she felt a flicker of hope. And deep inside, something else stirred, a quiet, dangerous curiosity about the man who had dared to touch her wounds, and perhaps her heart. Evelyn awoke to the smell of pine and smoke. The river was gone, replaced by the scent of a wood-burning fire and the earthy aroma of forest moss. She blinked against the morning light filtering through the rough-hewn window of a small log cabin. Her wounds had been cleaned and bandaged overnight. The pain had dulled, leaving only a faint ache. Tazha knelt nearby, sharpening a hunting knife with a steady, practiced rhythm. The sunlight glinted off the beads in his hair and the metallic accents of his tribal jewelry. He didn't glance at her as she stirred, but she felt his presence like a protective shield. "Where am I?" she whispered, voice hoarse. "Safe," he said simply, without looking up. "The forest is quiet now, but the world beyond is not." Evelyn tried to sit up, but her muscles protested. She glanced at the cabin, a small fireplace, a table roughly carved from oak, and shelves lined with dried herbs, animal hides, and carefully stacked firewood. "You brought me here?" she asked, all mingled with confusion. Tazha finally met her eyes. "You cannot return to the plains yet. They are no longer safe for you." His tone was firm, almost commanding, yet there was something in his gaze that hinted at care rather than authority. Evelyn swallowed hard. "And you? Why help me?" His eyes darkened slightly. "Because someone once showed me kindness. It saved my life. You will understand one day." She noticed the rough scar across his forearm, partially hidden beneath his bracelets, and the way his muscles tensed as he moved. There was danger in him, yes, but also something that felt familiar, though she had only known him for a few hours. As the day passed, Tazha tended to her injuries with meticulous care. He crushed herbs into a paste and gently applied it to the deeper cuts on her arm. Evelyn flinched at the sting but didn't pull away. His fingers brushed hers occasionally, each touch deliberate and steady. It was both terrifying and comforting, like standing near fire, warmth and danger intertwined. "Tomorrow we will forage," he said after a while, his tone lighter. "You must eat and regain your strength." She nodded, watching him move around the cabin with an easy grace, handling everything with confidence, chopping wood, stoking the fire, even rearranging her blanket for comfort. Each gesture, so simple, seemed laden with unspoken meaning. Evelyn explored the cabin, discovering carvings on the walls, animals, rivers, the sun, and stars etched into the wood. Each design was precise, meaningful. She realized they were not merely decoration, they were a map of Tazha's life, of his travels, his tribe, his beliefs. "Do you always carve?" she asked softly. He looked at her for the first time in a while, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "It reminds me of where I came from. It keeps me grounded in a world that often forgets who I am." Evelyn felt an odd warmth in her chest. She had spent her life in wealth and comfort, but she had never known a place so raw, so alive. The scent of pine, the sound of wind through the branches, the feel of sun on rough-hewn wood, it all made her pulse quicken. And beneath it, Tazha's presence made the air feel charged, electric with possibilities she had never dared to imagine. By evening, he had prepared a simple meal of roasted rabbit, wild berries, and warm herbal tea. They sat across from each other, silent at first, listening to the crackle of the fire. The wind rattled the cabin walls, and Evelyn noticed how his gaze softened in the dim light, resting on her as she nibbled cautiously. "You are healing fast," he said, breaking the quiet. She hesitated, not wanting to reveal the fluttering in her chest. "I feel different here, safer." He nodded, understanding more than she said. "This is the beginning, Evelyn. The world outside is harsh, but here, we can learn to survive together." Her pulse quickened at the weight of those words. She didn't know what survival with him truly meant, but she knew one thing. Her life had changed forever the moment he asked, "Can I clean your wounds?" Outside, the forest whispered, the pines swaying with the wind. As if acknowledging a new bond forming between two unlikely souls, one born of privilege, one of the wild dot, and as night fell, the fire's glow painted their shadows on the cabin walls, dancing together in silence. A promise of something more than survival flickering in the air between them. The forest outside was alive with whispers, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint crackle of the fire in the cabin. Evelyn lay wrapped in a heavy blanket on the floor, watching Tazha as he arranged a few herbs and roots near the hearth. His broad, muscular back glistened faintly in the firelight, the beads and feathers in his hair catching the glow. She had stopped counting how many times she had stared at him that day. Each glance left her heart racing. "Are you comfortable?" he asked without looking up. His voice was calm, but there was a subtle concern threading through it. "Yes," she murmured, trying not to sound weak. "Thank you for everything." He paused, then glanced at her, eyes dark and unreadable. "You owe me nothing." Evelyn's chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the warmth in her chest, the pull she felt toward him, whispered otherwise. She had lived her life surrounded by wealth, luxury, and the polished manners of Santa Fe society, but none of it had prepared her for the raw, quiet power of a man like Tazha, strong, capable, and yet vulnerable in ways he didn't show anyone. That night, the wind picked up outside, rattling the wooden shutters. Evelyn shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. Tazha noticed immediately. "Come closer to the fire," he said gently, holding out a hand. She hesitated, suddenly shy. Then, almost instinctively, she moved closer, the warmth of the fire seeping into her chilled body. Tazha reached over and draped a soft animal hide over her shoulders. His fingers brushed her arm, light but deliberate, and a shiver ran down her spine. They sat in silence for a while, the crackle of the fire filling the room. Evelyn noticed the subtle tension in his body, the way his muscles flexed under his skin even when he was relaxed. There was a strength about him, yes, but also a gentleness, a patience that made her feel safe in a way she had never known. "Do you always stay alone like this?" she asked softly, breaking the quiet. Taz's eyes flicked to hers, and for a moment his stoic mask faltered. "No," he said slowly. "But few people are worthy of trust. Few can survive the wilderness and remain human." Evelyn blinked, caught off guard. "Worthy of trust? You trust me?" His gaze lingered on hers. "I have seen your courage, Evelyn, and the willingness to endure. That is rare." Her pulse quickened. I want to learn," she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Not just to survive, but to understand. You, this life, you." Taz's jaw tightened slightly, and then a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Then you will stay, and you will watch, learn, listen." The night grew colder, and Evelyn leaned against him instinctively, feeling the warmth of his body through the hide. Tazha didn't move away. Instead, he adjusted slightly, careful not to crowd her but close enough that the proximity felt natural, necessary. Outside, the stars blazed like diamonds against the black sky. 1,000 silent witnesses to their tentative connection. Evelyn's thoughts drifted to her life before this, the gilded halls of her family's mansion, the endless social obligations, the suffocating rules of wealth and expectation. Here, under the forest canopy, with Tazha beside her, life felt raw, honest, and terrifyingly beautiful. "I feel alive," she murmured. Taz, how single quotes si softened, dark and unreadable. "You are alive," he said. "And that scares you, doesn't it?" She nodded slightly, unsure if it was the thrill of survival, the danger of the wilderness, or the intensity of being near him. Probably all three. He reached out slowly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. The touch lingered, deliberate, gentle yet full of unspoken promise. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She had never felt so seen, so understood, so drawn to someone she had only met days ago. "Sleep now," he said finally, his voice a low murmur. "Tomorrow, the world will test us again. But tonight, just rest." Evelyn nodded, letting her head fall back against the hide. As sleep crept over her, she felt Tazha's hand rest lightly on hers, a silent vow. A shield against the night, a promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. And outside, the forest held its breath, watching over two souls who had found in each other not only safety, but the fragile stirrings of love. Dawn painted the sky in streaks of amber and gold as Evelyn stirred in the cabin, still wrapped in the animal hide. Her arm had healed considerably, though faint scars remained, a reminder of the river and the fall that had brought her to Tazha. She watched him kneel by the fireplace, polishing a set of hunting knives. His muscles rippled under the morning light, beads and feathers in his hair swaying slightly as he moved. Evelyn had long stopped marveling at him. By now, the pull she felt was a quiet, insistent ache deep in her chest. "Breakfast is ready," Tazha said, his voice calm, almost gentle, yet carrying the authority of someone used to the wilderness. He placed a plate of roasted venison and wild berries in front of her. Evelyn ate slowly, her mind restless. The peace shattered with a sudden sharp knock on the cabin door. Both froze. Tazha's hand instinctively moved to his knife. Evelyn's heart pounded. Fear and curiosity mingled in equal measure. Who is it?" she whispered. "Stay behind me," Tazha instructed. "Do not speak." He moved to the door, muscular frame tense, eyes scanning the edge of the forest. Another knock echoed, louder this time, followed by a deep, authoritative voice. "Miss Marston, we've come to bring you home." Evelyn's stomach dropped. The voice was familiar, one of her father's ranch hands, though she didn't recognize the man himself. Relief and dread collided. She had longed to return to her family, yet she couldn't imagine leaving this forest, leaving Tazha. "Who are you really?" she asked under her breath, barely audible. "Do not answer," he murmured, hand resting lightly on the hilt of his knife. Tazha opened the door just enough to reveal the man, who looked at him with suspicion. "Step aside, stranger. This is Miss Marston." "You have no right. I protect her," Tazha interrupted, voice low and steady. "No one enters while I say otherwise." The man hesitated, glancing at Evelyn. Her gaze met his. She felt the weight of choice pressing down on her chest. She could leave, return to the world she had known, wealth and society awaiting her. Or she could stay, here, with a man who had saved her life, who had shown her a world she never imagined. I will stay," she said quietly, surprising herself. The man's jaw tightened. "You don't understand." "You cannot. I understand more than you think," she interrupted, standing straighter than she felt. "I am not a child. I choose where I belong." Tazha's eyes softened as he looked at her. "Then it is your decision," he said, stepping aside. The man scowled but left, muttering under his breath. Once the door was closed, the tension in the cabin dissolved like mist. Evelyn sank into a chair, trembling. Tazha knelt beside her, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "You have courage," he said softly. "Few would make that choice in the face of fear. I don't know why it feels so right," she whispered, voice breaking slightly. "Being here. With you." He looked at her then, dark eyes holding her gaze. "Because it is," he said simply. The firelight flickered across his chiseled features, and for a heartbeat, the world outside ceased to exist. Evelyn reached out tentatively, placing her hand over his. His skin was warm, strong, grounding her. The connection was electric, a silent acknowledgement that they were no longer just rescuer and rescued. They were partners. Allies, something more. The day passed slowly. They repaired a portion of the cabin roof damaged in a recent storm, foraged for fresh herbs, and prepared a stew over the fire. Tazha moved with effortless skill, muscles flexing under his skin as he carried firewood and knelt over the flames. Evelyn felt herself drawn to him in ways she didn't fully understand, her pulse quickening whenever he looked her way or spoke in that calm, authoritative tone. As evening fell, she watched him from the doorway as he stepped outside to tend to the small garden he had started near the cabin. The sunset painted his skin gold, highlighting the curves of his muscles, the shine of the beads in his hair. Her heart swelled. She realized that danger and wilderness no longer scared her because she had him, that night. As the fire crackled and the wind whispered outside, Evelyn lay awake, listening to the sound of Tazha's steady breathing. The scars on her arm throbbed faintly, reminders of her survival. But more than that, she felt something else, a quiet certainty that, whatever challenges came, she would face them by his side. For the first time in her life, Evelyn knew that love could be forged not in comfort or wealth, but in the wilderness and danger, in the quiet understanding between two souls who had chosen each other against all odds. Rain hammered against the roof of the cabin, drumming in relentless rhythm. Evelyn sat huddled by the fire, wrapped in an animal hide, listening to the storm rage outside. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the forest beyond in harsh, fleeting bursts. The wind howled, rattling the shutters, and the scent of wet pine filled the air. She shivered, though the fire's warmth and Tazha's presence beside her offered some comfort. He sat across from her, sharpening a hunting knife, muscles flexing under the firelight, beads and feathers swaying with every movement. His chest rose and fell steadily, calm in a storm that mirrored her inner chaos. Evelyn watched him quietly, her heart pounding. There was something magnetic about the way he moved, the strength in his hands and the quiet intensity of his gaze. "You're quiet," he observed, finally looking up. His dark eyes met hers, holding them with a weight that made her pulse quicken. "I'm thinking," she murmured, her voice barely above the crackle of the fire. "About everything. About how much has changed since I met you." He smiled faintly, a rare softness crossing his usually stoic features. "You survived the river, the wilderness, and your fear. You are stronger than you realize." Evelyn felt warmth bloom in her chest. "I've learned strength from you," she admitted, her fingers brushing against the hide covering her shoulders. "You've taught me more than anyone else ever has." Tazha's expression darkened slightly, though not with anger. It was a look of understanding, a recognition of her vulnerability and courage. "Strength alone does not prepare you for what lies ahead," he said softly, "but it gives you a chance to survive it." The storm intensified outside. Rain pounded the roof in deafening rhythm, and a gust of wind rattled the cabin door. Evelyn jumped slightly, and Tazha's hand was immediately on hers, steadying her. His touch sent a shiver down her spine, not from fear, but from the electricity between them. "Storms remind us we are small," he murmured. "But they also remind us we are alive." She looked up at him, eyes wide. "Alive? Because of you." He studied her, and for a heartbeat, the world shrank to the firelight, the storm, and the space between them. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned closer. Evelyn's breath caught. His presence was overwhelming, grounding, and thrilling at once. "You trust me," he said quietly. "More than you trust anyone else right now." I do," she whispered, the words trembling in her throat. "And I don't want to stop." He reached out, brushing a stray strand of wet hair from her face. His fingers lingered, tracing the curve of her jaw, the line of her neck. She leaned instinctively closer, and for the first time, the distance between them vanished. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the cabin there was only warmth and the slow, steady rhythm of two hearts finding each other. Tazha's hand rested lightly over hers, fingers intertwining, a silent promise forming between them. "I cannot leave you like this," he murmured, his voice low, full of emotion he rarely showed. "Not now, not ever." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "And I cannot leave you," she admitted, her voice barely audible over the thunder. I want to be with you, Tazha, here, now, always." He smiled, a rare, tender smile that softened the hard lines of his face. "Then stay," he said simply. "Not as a guest, not as someone to protect, but as someone who belongs." Her chest swelled with emotion. She had spent her life following rules, expectations, and obligations. Here, in this cabin, with Tazha beside her, danger outside and warmth inside, she felt free for the first time. Free to choose, free to feel, free to love. As lightning flashed again, illuminating his strong, bare chest and the shimmer of his tribal jewelry, Evelyn realized that life would never be the same. She had found something in Tazha that went beyond survival, something fierce, wild and unbreakable. Love, that night. As the rain fell and the wind howled, they sat together by the fire, hands entwined. The storm outside a distant roar. The cabin held them in its warm, protective embrace. And for the first time since her fall, Evelyn felt whole. The storm would pass, as all storms do. But what had begun here between firelight, rain, and two hearts was just the beginning. The forest had grown quieter by morning, the storm reduced to a soft drizzle that kissed the leaves and soil. Evelyn stepped outside, the damp earth cool beneath her boots. The scent of pine and wet moss lingered, mingling with the faint aroma of firewood from the cabin. She watched Tazha in the clearing, shirtless, the droplets of rain glistening on his muscular chest, beads and feathers in his hair catching the pale morning light. He moved with silent purpose, checking traps and inspecting the small garden he had begun to cultivate. "You've done so much here," Evelyn said softly, her voice carrying over the drizzle. "It's like you've built another world." Tazha looked up from tying a trap, his dark eyes meeting hers. "It is a place where life survives, where people like us can endure." She stepped closer, noticing the faint scars on his shoulders and arms, silent testimony to battles fought and dangers faced. "People like us?" she asked, curious. He gave a small, almost shy smile. "Those who live between worlds. The white man sees me as savage. Some in my tribe would call me traitor. Here, we are neither. Here, we are free." Evelyn's chest tightened. She felt the truth in his words. Free, not bound by expectation, wealth, or fear, free to choose. And for the first time, she realized she did not want to return to Santa Fe, not without him. The sound of rushing water drew her gaze to a narrow canyon nearby, where the river from which she had fallen twisted through the forest, glinting silver under the overcast sky. "You brought me here, but why?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Tazha approached, each step deliberate and confident. Because I saved you once. Because now I choose to stay with you. We face the world together, or not at all." Her heartbeat quickened. The words, simple as they were, carried weight that pressed against her chest. "I don't understand," she said, brushing her wet hair from her face. "How can I stay in a place I barely know? With someone I've only just met?" His gaze softened, eyes dark and steady. "Because when the world falls away, what remains is truth. And the truth is, we belong together." Evelyn's lips parted, breath-catching. She had been surrounded by riches and luxury all her life, yet none of it had ever felt like this raw, real, and consuming. She felt a pull toward him, magnetic and undeniable. Without thinking, she reached out and brushed a hand along his arm. Tazha caught her wrist gently, holding her hand against his chest. His skin was warm, soaked lightly from the morning drizzle, and his pulse throbbed beneath her palm. "You trust me," he murmured, voice low. I do," she admitted, eyes locked on his dot for a long moment. The forest held its breath. The rain softened to a mist, and the two of them stood together, hands entwined, hearts aligned. Then Tazha leaned closer, brushing his forehead against hers. The warmth of his breath mingled with hers, and Evelyn felt a deep, electrifying connection, a promise unspoken but undeniable. "We should explore," Tazha said finally, stepping back but keeping their hands joined. "There is a valley beyond these hills. Few have seen it. It is hidden, protected by the forest and cliffs. We can make it our home." Evelyn's eyes widened. Adventure, danger, freedom, and love. Her chest swelled with exhilaration. "Then let's go," she said, a spark of determination igniting in her gaze. Together, they left the cabin behind, stepping into the damp forest. The rain had softened the path, the mud clinging to their boots, and the scent of wet earth filled the air. Tazha led the way, alert, muscles taut and ready, while Evelyn followed closely, feeling her fear fade with each step. Hours later, they reached the edge of a hidden valley, sunlight breaking through the clouds to illuminate a small clearing surrounded by cliffs and waterfalls. Birds sang, and the river curved gracefully through the lush greenery. Tazha set down a pack, looking at her with that steady, fierce gaze she had come to know so well. "This," he said softly, "is ours. Here, we are safe. Here, we can live. Together." Evelyn stepped forward, letting the wet grass brush against her fingers, feeling the exhilaration of new beginnings. She turned to him, heart pounding. "Then we will," she whispered. Tazha smiled faintly, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Together," he echoed. And in that hidden valley, two souls, one born of privilege, one of the wild, found the freedom, love, and belonging they had been searching for all their lives. The hidden valley was alive with morning light. Birds called from the cliffs above. The river sparkled as it curved through the lush greenery, and the waterfalls sent mist sparkling like diamonds into the air. Evelyn breathed deeply, the fresh, wild scent filling her lungs. She had never felt so alive. Tazha stood beside her, shirtless, beads and feathers in his hair glinting in the sunlight. His dark eyes scanned the valley, alert but calm, muscles rippling as he moved with effortless strength. Evelyn watched him, her heart swelling with admiration and something deeper love, fierce and undeniable. "This place. It's perfect," she murmured, turning to him. "It is ours," he said simply, voice low, steady. "No one can reach us here. No one can dictate who we are or how we live. Here, we are free." Evelyn stepped closer, her fingers brushing his arm. The warmth of his skin, the strength of his muscles, the gentle weight of his gaze, it all made her pulse race. "I never imagined life could be like this," she admitted. "Danger, freedom, love, all at once." Tazha's lips curved into a rare, soft smile. "Life is never just one thing," he said. "It is what you make of it. And with you, I want to make it whole." Her breath caught. The simplicity and honesty of his words, spoken without pretense or expectation, struck her to her core. She had spent years navigating wealth, manners, and appearances, but none of it had ever felt real. Here, with him, every moment was vivid, raw, and true. Without thinking, she reached up, her hands brushing the long black hair that fell over his shoulders. Tazha leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. Evelyn's eyes closed, savoring the warmth, the closeness, the connection that had grown between them over the past days. "We've survived so much together," she whispered. "And yet, I feel like this is only the beginning." "It is," he murmured, his lips brushing hers in a gentle, deliberate kiss. It was neither rushed nor hesitant. It was a promise, a binding of two lives forged through trust, courage, and desire. Evelyn's heart pounded in response, and she melted into him, feeling the strength of his arms around her, the steadiness of his presence anchoring her in a world that had once seemed uncertain and cruel. They pulled back slightly, foreheads still touching. "I want to stay here," Evelyn said softly. "With you, always." Tazha's dark eyes softened, glimmering with unspoken emotion. "And you shall," he promised. "This valley, this life, it is ours to shape. No one can take it from us." Together, they walked through the valley, hand in hand. Evelyn noticed the small details she had overlooked before, the way the sunlight hit the waterfall, creating tiny rainbows in the mist, the delicate wildflowers at the riverbank, the soft rustle of leaves in the morning breeze. Everything felt alive, vibrant, and connected. Tazha led her to a small clearing near the river, where he had built a simple stone hearth and arranged a few wooden benches. "We will make this our home," he said. "Not just for survival, but for living, for love." Evelyn smiled, tears prickling her eyes. She had never imagined herself here in a hidden valley, beside a man who was both fierce and tender, strong and understanding. And yet, she could not imagine being anywhere else. The days that followed were filled with labor and laughter, learning and discovery. They hunted and fished together, tended the garden, and explored the valley's hidden nooks. Nights were spent by the fire, sharing stories, dreams, and quiet kisses under a canopy of stars. Each day strengthened their bond. Each shared moment deepened the love that had begun with a simple act of care. Tazha cleaning Evelyn's wounds by the river. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the cliffs and painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Evelyn leaned against Tazha, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat against her own. "I am home," she whispered. "And I am yours," he replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple dot in the hidden valley. Far from the expectations of society and the dangers of the outside world, two souls had found each other. Life was not easy, but it was theirs, filled with freedom, passion, and unwavering love. And so, Evelyn and Tazha began their life together, surrounded by wilderness, safety, and the firelight of a love that had been forged in courage, trust, and the untamed beauty of the Old West. They had survived storms, fear, and uncertainty, but now they faced the future hand in hand, hearts bound, and souls unbreakable. The valley echoed with life, love, and laughter, a testament to the journey of two people who had chosen each other, and a story that would be remembered long after the river's roar had faded into the mountains.